Epic just lost in court. If you haven't been paying attention, Epic got sued and lost big time, and now Blizzard is next in line to get targeted. That's right. The new laws are coming from the EU. Let's see what this one's all about here from our good buddy, Bellular.
Okay, everyone, get this. Blizzard is under investigation, and Epic Games have already lost. That's quite the statement, and here's essentially what's going on, right? Regulators across the EU are now holding some of the biggest companies in gaming accountable for dark patterns and exploitative consumer practices, meaning, in this case, Blizzard and Epic. And what's big is that 2026 may actually be when the tide turns here, and that's because the EU is preparing one of the largest legal rollouts on digital consumer rights in years, and
This is good. I mean, a lot of these changes to the EU, they're good, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's still better to be American because maybe I want to get my cheeks clapped by a conglomerate corporation. Maybe I want the option to get absolutely destroyed from the rear end by Blizzard and everyone else who's currently dropping all kinds of shit to be bought for this game. No, in all actuality, people will look at these European laws and be like, well, what does it mean for us here in America or us in Australia or whatever? The thing is, a lot of these companies will create games, right? One version of the game that basically suits both markets. And because they know a lot of times these European regulations eventually leak their way over the pond. So what happens in Europe does have an effect on what happens here in the US, believe it or not.
That could change the face of gaming globally. So today, I've got a fairly big story to dive into. Last year, we covered the EU's move against virtual currency when the European Consumer Organization laid out key principles for handling digital currencies under existing EU law. And as it turned out, that whole thing was really contentious, and that's because they hadn't consulted with the games industry before they made their claims, but they also...
If you don't know, quick summary, this was a whole thing against virtual currencies and their predatory practices, the way that you got to buy more than you need and everything else, and the conversion rates and all this other bullshit that was happening with these virtual currencies. And this horsey cock game was the first one that kind of kicked it all off, and then it just kind of snowballed and later on to basically affect all currencies that are purchasable in-game.
Hadn't consulted with other EU bodies who are basically working in the same area of policy. So it was all a little bit of a mess. But the reason why we're here today is because things have actually changed. You see, in the last few weeks, we've seen that those principles may not have been needed to take on every bad practice. And that's because regulators are already going after major companies like Blizzard and Epic, and they're doing so under existing law. And the first bit of this story is that specific targeting. We'll start off with Activision Blizzard, because they're in hot water with Italy's competition regulator, who have opened up investigations into the use of dark patterns in mobile games. Of course, dark patterns are basically all the manipulative bullshit that you find in games like that. And specifically, we're talking about Diablo Immortal and Call of Duty Mobile.
God, I knew Diablo Immortal was going to come up. I mean, that game, let's be honest, Blizzard made that game for China. Yes, we have phones, and that question was asked, and we do in fact have phones, but it's really China that's carrying the day with Diablo Immortal, because for some reason, the Chinese love to spend copious amounts of money on pay-to-win games. They just do. It's a different culture. I don't know what it is over there, why they're so, eager to play pay-to-win, but they just are, and Diablo Immortal is a great freaking version of play-to-win, for sure, and Blizzard's made a shit ton of money in China off that game.
Scrutiny for...
They have WoW Gacha. Yes, they do. Believe it or not, they do have loot boxes. We've seen them already advertised many times for a lot of events. They have purchasable loot boxes for WoW. Yeah, so it's a totally different game over there.
Quote, engaging in misleading and aggressive practices, as well as breaching consumers' contractual rights. Which doesn't sound too good. Now, the allegations run through the usual assortment of things, right? That's the FOMO-driven pop-ups for limited events, obfuscating currency packages, all of the usual dark pattern bullshit that we see in mobile games.
Well, I mean, even here in the US, we did have a FOMO mount, right? The Long Boy, right? The Blizzard, dropped it. It was like, oh, you better get yourself the Long Boy. Get that $90 out, remortgage your homes, because you don't know when the Long Boy is going to come back. And then it did come back, and again, there was a surge in purchases, and then it went away again. Guess what? No Long Boy right now. It's that whole, limited time FOMO, buy it now, or you might not be able to buy it again kind of shit. Blizzard's done that many times, even before the Long Boy. The Iron Sky Reaver amount that I gave away not too long ago, that thing's been gone for 3 years. That was a Warlords of Draenor purchasable amount. So they know what they're doing, and they keep doing it.
Things actually get a little bit more specific. You see, the Italian regulator argues that these games are implicitly targeting kids through lax parental controls. Their use of implicit is real fascinating there. You see, those controls aren't set to maximum protection by default, and they come after the user has already been pressured to surrender over control of their personal data and their refund rights. Lovely. Now, if the regulator finds that these games breach Italian law, then they can demand changes or levy fines. And that is exactly what just happened to Epic Games. And we got the Dutch to thank for it. So, Epic just lost their appeal against a 2024 €1.1 million fine, which is really not that much, but it was a fine from the Dutch Consumer Authority. Now, that case was centering on FOMO tactics and timed sales targeting children. Lovely stuff. Obviously, €1.1 million is not that much to the makers of Fortnite, right? They probably made that back in the time that it took for us to write this script.
Right.
Not probably, definitely. But the fine is not the real story here. The regulator insisted that Epic stop using countdown timers that didn't actually mark content being removed from the game. And it's something that we see all over the internet and games and sites, basically fake countdown timers.
Wait a minute, Fortnite puts... I haven't played enough Fortnite to know this. Fortnite puts countdown timers on items that are not actually going to go away when the timer's over? That is fucked. It's a fake FOMO. Shit. Man, that's worse than real FOMO, and real FOMO's bad enough.
It's horrible. I absolutely hate it, so... Well, I think it's good that it's actually being looked at. I mean, if a countdown timer reflects reality, then sure, fair enough. If it's just fake bullshit made up to manipulate people's psychology, yeah, that is actually unfair, and I don't think companies should be allowed to do that. So the way to take this is that the first fine is basically just a warning shot. The real threat is demanding compliance with regulator-led changes. That would be a true threat to the bottom line. And 2026 is the year where those demands across the EU are very much about to be supercharged. This is the bit that will truly matter at scale and bring this beyond little small things in individual countries. Now, a while back, I realized something comfortable that I'm sure you've experienced as well, and that's my phone stopped being a tool. It wasn't helping me anymore, it was just filling time. And that's where I found that today's sponsor,
Look at this
Shortform,
ad. What a wonderful
amazing.
ad placement.
And I'll talk you
there
through it with
is.
a real example.
The ad,
You've probably
yes.
heard the term Machiavellian as a sort of insult, but often, said with people having not actually read a page of the man himself. So, I went through Shortform's guide on the prince. And it's a true guide. It's not some 10-minute AI slop summary. It's actual depth, going through his relationship to Florence, and even the fact that the prince was wrote after he was tortured and exiled by the Medicis, and the whole scholarly debate about whether it is a sincere piece of advice or a bit of a pro-democracy satire. It's just a whole layer of depth that
love my long boy. I can use the H right.
Whenever they hear
yes, I know.
Common phrase.
It's a good
context that completely reframes the text, and that's basically what Shortform does.
Use the H outside the H.
They use human writers. You get chapter by chapter breakdowns with analysis,
human
with
writers.
counterpoints, and with connections between other works.
Why would they do that?
So that rather than replacing reading with a bunch of summaries, they're actually helping you explore the ideas and read more books. And they've even got a browser extension for articles and YouTube, as well as master guides that compile multiple books on a single topic. So, for the price of one book a month, you can get access to thousands. And you can try it for free at shortform.com/Bellular News. And when you do, you'll get $50 off the annual plan.
Use the
In a
man's
piece he
plan.
wrote for GameIndustry.biz, Dr. Andreas Lober, who is basically heavily involved in the law side on games and on IP, he described the Digital Fairness Act as one of the biggest things that could impact the games industry this year.
No doubt.
That's obviously huge. And what this law is an EU-wide review of online consumer problems, not just within games. Much of it covers the likes of social media apps, online stores, subscription services, but there will be impact on games as well, specifically centered around dark patterns, addictive designs, and personalization practices. So very much stuff that we actually feel in the games that we buy and play. Now, of course, most of these things are already regulated in some form. Obviously, Italy and the Netherlands couldn't have launched those cases without, something to go off. But what the DFA will do is close loopholes and create a single policy framework across the entire EU with standardized rules. That's fairly big, and you may be wondering, right, if that is big, what could it actually change for me? Well, the proposal went through public review in 2025, and we're not going to know the final results until the legislation is issued, but we can see what it's interested in, and that means we can see what bits could actually matter to us. The big one. The European Consumer Organization principles that we talked about in the channel last year could become enforceable law. That's huge. And what that would mean is this. Virtual currencies might have...
Yeah, virtual currencies have always been frickin' garbage, honestly. And the fact that you can't buy as much as you actually need to buy things has always been a predatory practice where you buy more than you need and then you end up with like this odd number of currencies remaining. So you got to buy more currency the next time you want to buy. It's definitely predatory. And it targets kids for sure too, because kids don't know. They don't understand. They need V-Bucks, right? They don't get that purchasing. They're like, oh, it's only 4 V-Bucks, but you can't buy 4 V-Bucks. You got to buy 40 or something like that. It's ridiculous, and I hope this thing ends up working, because I think digital currencies have always been a scam.
Have to display real-world conversion rates and remove features that pressure purchases. There's also scrutiny on the bundling and pricing presentation. Issues like, say, leftover currency.
Yep.
They're all pretty much done so that you've got to buy in a bundle that is more than what you actually need. Also on pity timers that encourage mass spending, on pay-to-skip, and on pay-to-win models. So there could actually be solid stuff that could be enforced on all of those fronts. And the sort of change you would see is basically more upfront information, better parental controls built in, and better withdrawal and refund policies, which I think is perhaps the major bit, especially the likes of the refund policies. But what's important to recognize here is that this is a holistic review. So they're looking at skin gambling, loot boxes, and even consumer protections around games whenever they end service. I mean, in a way you could see that as the Stop Destroying Games campaign goals, but approached from the perspective of contract law. Essentially, better terms could entitle refunds if a game shuts down early. I mean, recently we actually had
refunds when a game shuts down early? We talking Ashes of Creation? Maybe. Look, the whole thing the way I understood it and the way people were talking about it yesterday is because they went through Steam, they're not having to deal with all these refund call-outs. Whereas before, they could have just went direct to purchase or something like that. They didn't do it. Now you purchase it through Steam, so now Steam has to deal with all these people who want refunds, and the company's dissolving. So I think there's gonna be some new regulations made just around how this whole thing went down, honestly.
One little case in the UK where it turns out if you were to steal someone's virtual currency, so if I somehow stole all of your RuneScape gold, that would actually be me stealing your property, which does kind of raise the question, what happens if that thing shuts down, including all of your virtual currency? Anyway, obviously UK, not EU, but it's a little spicy, so I thought I'd bring it up. Now, where it gets fun is there's quite a knock-on effect on other areas of interest, not just the kind of free-to-play microtransaction mobile game hell. There's also reviews of subscription models which could mean easier cancellation for, say, your WoW sub or your PS Plus sub, alongside warning emails for auto-renewals or for price rises. All stuff that I think is fairly reasonable. It's basically...
I get them now, and I don't know when it started, but Blizzard emails me now when my sub is about to renew. And I don't remember that being a thing for a long time, but now it is. I always see it. I'm like, oh, what's this, Blizzard? Oh, they're just telling me my sub is renewing. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Take my $15 like you have been for the last 20 years. So that to me is like them preparing for regulations like this, perhaps, because I don't think they have to yet. But hey, why not put it ahead of time? The other shit about canceling your sub and everything, I think Blizzard's always made it fairly easy to cancel your WoW sub. I don't think it's ever been like this hidden or obfuscated thing where like you have to go look for it. It's a pretty easy cancellation process.
Just giving a consumer more information. Now, to be clear, this stuff is still a ways off from being law. I'll walk you through kind of the process. Q2 of this year will bring the consultation summary and impact assessments, then the final proposal will likely be tabled Q4. And by the way, whenever I say tabled here, I mean that in the UK EU version of tabled, which means put on the table, and not the North American version of whenever people say tabled, which usually means put out of the discussion and into the table, where, I don't know.
That's what I thought he meant, was like, oh, they're going to stop discussions? Okay.
Presumably, it goes into storage.
Those Europeans, I don't understand them.
It's actually happening in this context. Now, after that, the EU Parliament and Council will negotiate and adopt the policy, and even then, even once that happens, enforcement would not be an immediate thing. Companies would need time to adapt, and of course, mount legal challenges on whether the law was created in a way that is fair.
A law just passed here not long ago where gyms have to make it a one-click cancel now. That's crazy, because, you know, during COVID, I got stuck paying my gym membership for a while, and because they told me I could start my membership online, which was what I did, but I could not cancel my membership online. It was like for Edge Fitness over here, like this, you know, just random chain of gyms. And obviously COVID happened, and I was like, I can't go to the gym. Nobody's going to the gym. The gyms are basically closed. And they're like, well, you have to come into the gym to cancel your membership. I'm like, well, what do you mean? You guys aren't open. I'm like, oh, sorry, you can't cancel online. I'm like, what the fuck is this? What is this? So I ended up like disputing it on my credit card. I was like, fuck this. I'm not authorizing this anymore. And then it went away. But that was kind of bullshit. So I'm glad to hear that stuff changed. Instead of calling 75 different representatives, yeah, basically.
All of that stuff that, of course, they can do. So realistically, we'd see at minimum
I had to tell them I was moving.
Year from this video before the rules would be implemented, and then enforcement would take time after that. But what this absolutely is the tide shifting. And since this would apply across the EU, it would mean that every publisher would face a choice. Publishers could either build an EU-only version of their store that complies with these rules, or they could just change the game for absolutely everyone in the world. The decision will just come down to simple maths. If building an EU-compliant version costs more than what they would lose globally from removing those dark patterns entirely, then that move would make sense. Right. Now, we've seen this historically with loot box bans, where individual countries aren't really worth changing for. But that only works when the rest of the world isn't also making things difficult. It's easy to say, sorry Dutchies, you don't get your loot boxes. A little bit different if it's more than just, say, that one country.
I think we're going to get to a point where only China has loot boxes. Like, that's where it's going right now, is only China will still have loot boxes.
And the good news here is the rest of the world is already showing that it may just be easier to comply. You see, even in America, the FTC has been holding companies to account. Last summer, we saw that Epic processed another round of FTC-mandated refunds for deceptive practices, and all of that was following a 2023 settlement about dark patterns. In total, there was just shy of 1 million payments and a total of $128 million going out to people. Then, similarly, Cognisphere, the makers of Genshin Impact, well, they settled over alleged deceptive loot box odds, obfuscated rewards, and data collection violations. All lovely stuff. It only cost them $20 million in fines. They then updated their store to show premium currency and loot box costs in real money, and they've also got to age verify users and can't sell loot boxes to under 16-year-olds. Now, in both of those cases, what we saw is that pressure from regulators brought companies to the table to actually make changes through settlements. And this pressured cooperation is essentially what some hope will be enough to change this industry, and ideally, of course, to change it for the better. But it'll be
that South Park crossover freaking looks amazing, I'm not gonna lie.
Wrong to leave this video without saying that cleaning up the industry does come with costs of its own. For example, one European General Counsel told Dr. Lober, who was writing for GameIndustry.biz, that there may be knock-on effects, that existing regulatory methods could end up being hampered, while developers using free-to-play models may struggle with, quote, being micromanaged by regulation. And we've seen some hints of this with how smaller developers are reacting to the UK's Online Safety Act. Yes, that thing again. Basically, in the short term, there may be pain, right? Especially for devs who can't afford enough legal advice and legal support. But they've also noted there is room for the industry to self-regulate and collaborate with regulators before the regulations take effect. And maybe, if they were just to play ball nicely, we could go through this in a basically painless way. Because look, if you're using dark patterns to make money, if you've got to rely on psychological...
It's intentional. Dark patterns are intentional. You're not accidentally scamming people, okay? So the whole thing about these companies not being able to follow the regulations, sure, if the regulations get complicated, I can imagine, oh man, we didn't know that we can't sell this on a Tuesday or something like that. But the obvious predatory practices are what they are, and it's very obvious when they're happening, and they're intentional. So to get rid of them, I don't think it's that big of a deal for a lot of these companies. They're just going to say, oh, I was ignorant to this. No, you freaking put a timer on something that's not actually going away to get people to purchase it. That's pretty predatory. I think that's kind of fucked up. So don't do that shit.
Manipulation to make your shit effective. Maybe that says that your core offering is just really weak, because you've got to resort to manipulating people to earn your money. I think if companies have got to stoop that low, then it clearly means they're happy enough to just put all of these negative externalities out into the world. The damage...
Who would have thought horse girls would change the entire industry? Who would have thought? I swear to God, life is poetic sometimes.
People just for their bottom line. That is bad. My hope in all of this is that the era of...
Juan, thank you so much for the sub, man. I appreciate.
Make it happen like Prosser and Keaton.
That's right. Thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate that.
Unchecked dark patterns is ending. How much it will cost these companies to adapt, I'd say, is now entirely up to them. They might lose some dirty money by taking these things away. That may mean less profit. That may mean less growth. That may even mean some job losses. But that's entirely okay, because if our industry is built on dark patterns, then how much does it really deserve to grow? How much does it deserve to do well? How much of a net positive is it for society? That's at least where my mind goes to in this one. Now, if you want to watch something next, well, you should check out what's going on with Ubisoft. They just cancelled a bunch of games, delayed a bunch of games, cut studios, cut staff. It's a whole big thing, and you can learn about it in this video next.
Crazy. I mean, industry layoffs, that's like a freaking standard these days. But these changes, they would be good. They'd be good for sure. Not just for kids, for adults. There's a lot of adults. And while we shouldn't have to, pat adults on the back and guide them, they get scammed by this shit. Honestly, they do. They see something, they're like, oh no, FOMO. And, Blizzard and other companies understand what they're doing. They do. Putting timers on things, making things limited time only. It makes people purchase things. I promise you, if the Long Boy didn't have a set time on it where it's going to come and go, they wouldn't have as many purchases in that block of time that they did. Right? Whatever it was available for, like a month-long time. That thing would have been purchased, sure. People still would have bought it. It is a useful mount. It's definitely a cool mount, but not as much as it was purchased in that month-long timeline. And then it came back, and then it went away again. And it's just Blizzard will keep doing that little bait and switch to get people to purchase more. And these predatory practices, Europe keeps attacking them. We'll see what happens in North America and everywhere else, but a lot of times they kind of follow suit. So that's a good one. Nice video from Balular.